Hey everyone, Tu here, co-founder of Cleverific. Today I'm talking with Matt Habib, co-founder and CMO of Ship Velocity. They're a 3PL based out of Miami, handling fulfillment for many DTC brands. And today we're going to talk about what actually happens after someone clicks buy, why fulfillment costs are silently eating into brands' margins, and the stuff that nobody talks about until it's too late. Matt, great to have you here.
Thank you. Stoked to connect.
Awesome. And for people who don't know yet, walk us through what you do at Ship Velocity.
Ship Velocity is a really unique 3PL. We focus on just ecom brands. Our bread and butter is people who are doing Shopify. And we've basically created a really simple model where we just charge the shipping rate and pick and pack. There's no extra fees like storage, account management, software fees. We just try to keep it simple so that our brands know exactly what they're paying so that they could scale. We're founders ourselves. We've run ecom stores, we've sold. And so we understand the growing pains. We understand some of the operational challenges and the marketing challenges. So I've been trying to help our brands to not only lock in really good fulfillment, but we're trying to help them with marketing. We're looking at their creatives. We're looking at their email marketing strategies, their post-purchase experience. We're trying to help them optimize the customer experience and their top of funnel, back funnel, all that jazz, so that we're helping them in more than just fulfillment itself.
That's a pretty amazing extra incentive to work with Ship Velocity.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do. And to be honest, there's a lot of great 3PLs that could do fulfillment just as well as we can. And so we thought, how could we provide an edge? And we have the insight, we have the background in ecom. So we thought, why don't we try to be a little bit more involved in our brands and their growth? So yeah, it's been a great journey.
What do brands think is easy in fulfillment that's actually a nightmare?
I think that some of the operational challenges, the biggest operational challenges that we faced are when brands are constantly in a backlog of inventory. So if they keep selling through their stock and then they're just like sending us a bunch of shipments, say like their manufacturers in China, and it takes a long time to ship it by ocean. So they're sending it by air. And if we get a bunch of air shipments that are scattered, we don't know exactly what comes in each one. On the brand side, they kind of live in a digital world, so they don't realize how it affects an operation when there are unexpected shipments arriving. And it sometimes will result in us taking a little bit longer to put it back into circulation, organize it, ship it correctly. I would say that's probably the biggest misunderstanding that brands sometimes have is what it takes to receive the goods, organize it, and then start the actual pick and pack so we could ship it. Because we try to do it same day, but if it's received a little bit in a chaotic way where it's not labeled correctly, kind of like the boring stuff, that's where we start to run into more challenges. And they're like, wait, what happened? You received it today. Why couldn't we ship it today?
Got it. And how often does that typically happen that brands aren't really aware of? Everyone always thinks that, oh, it's delivered, it's smooth, no big deal. Like you said, since it's already there, I should be able to sell things right out of it end of day, right?
Usually, ideally, it only happens once. And then we work together to figure out like, how can we help you with forecasting your inventory better? One of the reasons that we don't charge storage is because we don't want brands to be disincentivized from sending us excess goods. We want them to always be in stock so we could always do same day fulfillment for them. At the beginning of Velocity, we found that we were finding out by accident that brands didn't understand this piece of the business. So we have gotten better at proactively providing the education, like saying, this is what labels should look like. This is how you want to ship with like a freight provider, like a freight forwarder from your manufacturer to our warehouse. Like, again, some of the boring stuff that you don't want to think about when you're doing e-commerce, you just want to sell. We're trying to get better at educating our guys so that they could get ahead of it and make sure that they don't run into it.
Got it. And I want to go back to the other things that you can help brands with, particularly the front end and rising CPAs. Like ads aren't really going anywhere, but clearly the rise of CPAs, it's like, where does it end? Like, what can we do, right?
That's the biggest challenge. I think that a lot of the brands that we work with, they really know how to market and they're good at identifying exactly where their break-even ROAS is. So the difference between a 1.9 and a 2.0 is pretty important, because if their break-even is at 2, say they pay $1 and they make 2 on that, their goal is to coast that line as long as possible so that, yes, they might be breaking even on the first purchase, but they know that they're going to make money back on the LTV, the retention. If their ROAS is profitable, then that means you could scale your ads more consistently. And then the challenge is, how do we get the CPAs down? There's a lot of ways that we could do that, but I don't know if we could expect CPAs to go down as a general trend. Like the stock market is always going up. CPAs are always going up. That's kind of what I've been seeing since like jumping into ecom 5 years ago. There's a lot of ways that we could drive it down. There's only so much room that you could leverage that. And I think that the post-purchase experience is a way that we could try to, if the CPAs are high enough, then maybe we need to find a way to increase the AOV by incorporating post-purchase upsells, things like that, or incorporating subscription models into your business. Yeah, there's a lot there, but we could focus on maybe one at a time.
Sure, absolutely. If a brand is spending more on ads and still not profitable, where should they actually be looking?
So there's two things. I would say number one, probably the most important thing if you're not profitable is to look at your creatives. If you're running ads and your CPC is like, let's just say it's at $1 and your average order value is $30 and you have a 2% conversion rate. If it costs $1 to get a click, 100 customers to go to your store is $100. 2% conversion rate means 2 people purchasing at the $30 AOV. That means that unless you could drive down your cost per click, you're only going to make $60 on 100, even if you have a 2% conversion rate. I think the creative is the most important element in driving down the cost per click because you want people to be really interested. And when they're really interested and they click, then you're going to get a cheaper CPC because you could put it in front of 1,000 people, but if they don't click, then it's going to be costly. So I'd say that
Right.
probably the most important thing, and Gary Vaynerchuk would probably agree with me here, is creative, creative, creative. That's the most important thing to look at because it's the first way a customer interfaces with your brand.
What's something brands think is optimizing CRO when it's actually just wasting time?
That's a really good question. Sometimes brands will try to completely reinvent their offer when they haven't run A/B tests on their main offer. One of the brands that I've been working with, he came to me and he shared that, we're running a lot of traffic to the landing page, or to the PDP. And I feel that we need to change it because it's just not converting that well. So I had a look and it was actually a pretty solid PDP in theory. Like the photos were really good. There were call outs on the photos. There was a comparison, testimonials, reviews. Everything was really well organized and polished. But the call to action was kind of like a gray button. And it looked almost as if the product was out of stock. Instinctively, when I saw the gray button, I just assumed the product is out of stock. In his mind, he was like, should I completely recreate a new PDP or do I need to change the offer? I was like, hold on, dude, just change the button to green and see what happens. And instantly there was a jump in conversions from the change to the colors. Sometimes CRO is very sophisticated. Sometimes it's very simple. Just consumer psychology, red button, green button outperforms all other colors virtually
Right.
as a call to action. I would say that that's probably something that's overlooked.
Now, I know that what you're offering is really, really quite unique in the space, right? And so what's the order of ops for you? Like, okay, so there's this whole fulfillment side, and then there's help with this other unexpected side. So what would brands kind of see?
I find that for 90% of the calls that I jump onto with brands, we just geek out on e-commerce and then we've got 10 minutes left and I'm like, oh dude, we haven't started talking about fulfillment yet. Uh let's bang out these details and then I could confirm, this is what the ballpark pricing would be. We're like ecom first, just love talking about marketing, funnels, Shopify, and then and tech, and then we'll jump into fulfillment because it's pretty straightforward, especially for a lot of the brands that we work with. They tend to be lower SKU range. Weights don't really range that much, so it's fairly easy for us to plug in based on your weight, this is the shipping cost that you're going to be looking at per order. And then based on your volume and SKUs, this is the cost for picking and packing. So for us, we probably spend 80% of the time talking ecom and then 20% talking about fulfillment.
I love that. That's pretty great. I feel like I'm getting a deal.
Yeah. But you know what? I would say that there's a lot to be said in terms of Shopify tech that is very fulfillment adjacent. So, for example, with Cleverific, if we have a brand and they're looking to jump in with us and they're saying, well, we see a lot of delays with our fulfillment because of order address issues. And so that's why we're looking for a new 3PL. I would probably say, you know, that actually sounds like not a 3PL issue. It sounds like it's probably more of a tech issue. Do you guys
Mm-hmm.
offer order editing in the back end for customers to be able to fix their address or change their order right there? We try to also have conversations about post purchase, returns, tracking, all that jazz. Because then we know that it's going to affect our operation to an extent and we could work around.
That's true. And I mean, we do the same thing too. We love helping, right? And sometimes the solution has nothing to do with us, but it's the right one to offer or ask someone to consider, like, hey, have you considered XYZ? You don't have to solve the problem in the way that you're thinking. Just like you said, hey, the problem isn't the 3PL. The problem is just giving people access to do something themselves or whatever it may be. So it's always nice to get a second opinion or just talk through what you're working on with multiple people because you never know an answer can come out of outside the box or left field and it solves your problem elegantly and you never thought about it.
Yeah, completely.
And so, what's the difference between a brand that keeps customers versus ones that lose them after the first purchase? That's probably like top of people's mind these days.
Yeah, this will sound salesy, but the reality is probably the number one reason that we find brands are looking to plug into US 3PL or plug into us specifically is it's not because they're looking to move from another US 3PL. It's actually because they've been drop shipping from China or say their goods are being held in China and shipped internationally, not necessarily drop shipping because they own the product. And with that, especially if it's supplements or in the wellness category, if customers are seeing China show up in the tracking experience, they'll often take another glance and think, okay, like, is this product good quality? Even if it is good quality, do I want to support US made and shipped? You know, like, what does it tell the customer? And you'll probably experience a drop in LTV or retention in general if you're shipping from outside of the US, just because A, it takes longer, but B, if the customer does receive signal that it's being shipped from outside of the US, they're not typically too excited about that.
Now, how do you help brands take a look at that? And what does that look like if someone was like, oh, okay, I'm considering moving my supply chain from China to somewhere else?
Well, there's certainly some tools that brands could use to actually understand what their LTV is. It's hard to know exactly what it's going to be like moving to the US compared to China, but if your LTV on each customer isn't too far above the AOV and you're just not seeing many customers returning, then that would probably be the biggest signal that if you moved into the US, you would probably see an improvement. This raises a pretty good question for me because I'm now thinking there would definitely be merit to running case studies because probably all of the brands that have plugged in with us have grown. They've scaled significantly since plugging into the US. It's a bit of user bias, if I'm being honest, because if you're at the scale where it makes sense to plug into the US, there's a good chance you have the tools to grow and you're on a good trajectory. But I do think that there's definitely a correlation where if you're shipping from the US, good turnaround times, customers are receiving it soon after they order and they see it's shipping out of Miami, Florida, they're more likely to return and leveraging, you know, email marketing as like probably the biggest tool to bring in returning customers. Email marketing as a metric would probably be one of the better ways to really tell the success of moving into the US, how the performance was after compared to before, or just looking at
Yeah.
LTV. Yeah.
Right, right. And, just speaking as a consumer, part of it is the friction of unknown, like, oh, I bought this product and I didn't realize where it was shipping from. But now as I look at my receipt or my invoice or even my notification, I'm concerned like, oh, but what if I don't like it? What happens to returns and things like that, right? A lot of scenarios start running through your head where you didn't expect that and you saw, you just saw this location and it triggered some thoughts that caused you to think twice about what you just purchased.
Completely. I don't imagine anyone has had those thoughts when they order from Amazon, hey?
No, no,
Yeah.
not really. Yeah, it's interesting what most brands have to compare themselves to these days, whether they like it or not, right? Like, hey, there's a certain expectation in the US from how you buy on someone else's store and that expectation carrying across every store.
Yeah, completely. I think also the other challenge, other than like customer perception when it's shipping outside of the US, is I do believe that Amazon has been shaping us as consumers to have gnarly expectations of
Yeah,
turnaround
yeah.
time, ease of returns. Like I think that at least like here in Toronto, Canada, or in the West in general, maybe we've been pampered a little bit to have like the expectation of same day, next day delivery.
Here's a fun fact though. So I'm trying to recondition myself to like, I don't really need anything, or very seldomly do I need something next day, right? When we talk to brands, I did a little street survey one time. And, the couple of people that I talked to on the street said, yeah, when I buy something online, I expect it like immediate, right? And then I said, how long is immediate? And surprisingly, a number of people said, a week. They would expect something in a week, which
Really?
is so shocking from the perception of a brand to when you actually talk to someone. Like, hey, it makes sense that most people think they need something in 2 days, but honestly, no one really needs it. As long as the shipping notification shows up and tells me, hey, it's on its way, or it was packaged in some reasonable amount of time. It doesn't need to be that day, so long
Yeah.
as it's reasonable. And people's expectations of reasonable are a little more lax than most brands think. So that was something surprising for me too.
Yeah, completely. At least the way that we've been using Amazon in our household, we've noticed that it's more like the immediate utility, the things that you'll get from Walmart and you need today. Like the shower drain isn't fixed. Let's buy Drainol or something, like that's the kind of thing that you want next day. Whereas
Mhm.
there's a brand that's really rad and they have something unique that I want to buy. I actually don't really care about how long it takes for it to get to me as long as the product is good. So it's tough too because we all have been in ecom for so long that you can't really see the air around you. I'd like to think that the world is a little bit like me, but I don't know. Maybe we're unique in that stance. But I do really see Shopify, independent brands competing with Amazon.
Absolutely. Now, we talked a lot about ecom, so let's go back into fulfillment. What do most brands have no idea about when it comes to what is actually costing them in fulfillment?
Something that I see often is so in the 3PL industry, and this is part of the reason that Ship Velocity was born, is there's quite a bit of a lack of transparency in how the rates are distributed. Brands will come in and they'll say, hey, like I'm not really happy about the pricing out of 3PL. Can you quote us? And so I'll quote them out and it'll be $2 for pick and pack. And they'll be like, well, my 3PL had like 50-cent pick and pack and then 30 cents for each additional item. Then I'll ask, well, how much does it cost to ship? Because it costs for us for a pound package, let's say it'll cost about $4.70 as an example on average. And then they'll be like, oh, well, it's like $6 to ship. It's like $6 or $7 to ship a pound package. So I'm like, okay, so they've added a huge buffer to their shipping price. They've marked it up completely. And then your actual pick and pack looks like you're getting a good deal. So you're stoked. At the end of the day, you're paying $8 to ship it. Whereas with us, it would be, $6.40 or $6.70, just as like an arbitrary example. But that's the thing that I see a lot is brands really getting gouged on the shipping itself, even though these big 3PLs have some of the best rates for shipping. They might even have better shipping rates than we do. It's just that when we get 470, they'll get 420, but they'll mark it up by like $3. So I would say that that's probably the thing that a lot of brands miss is they're not asking the critical questions when they talk to 3PLs about, hey, are the shipping rates marked up? And I think it's okay that they mark them up because we need to maintain margin. And if we have really good shipping rates, then we could mark it up slightly and still give the brand a good economical price. But I think that there's sometimes like a not a game, but I don't feel that it's completely transparent the way that brands are being pitched on pricing.
Yeah. So walk us through an invoice and like where you would be catching fees or what to look out for as you're assessing some of these things.
I'll share with you kind of like the breadth of fees that you could experience at a 3PL. So it's the shipping and the pick and pack. That's standard with every 3PL. You'll be seeing that. The next would be storage fees, receiving fees. So storage fees are monthly. As long as you have your pallets stored at the facility, that you're going to be paying monthly per pallet likely. And then receiving, so whenever you ship in new goods, it's going to cost you. And then There's account management fees, so to have Matthew overseeing your account, and then the software fees, so to access the software that the warehouse is paying for. So those four accessory things, so receiving, storage, software, account management, those are going to be the fees that are tacked on aside from shipping and pick and pack. And we've said, forget those fees. Let's make it easier to calculate how much it costs to ship this cup to the customer. And so we just go with the shipping and the pick and pack.
So why do you think that, I guess will be a loaded question, but
Yeah.
so why do you think transparency is so rare in the 3PL space?
I think there's like a skeptical answer. I'm skeptical of the industry, but then there's also kind of the pragmatic answer. The pragmatic answer is it's easier to be profitable and to make money on clientele if you're marking fees up and you're adding a lot of accessory fees, because that means the brand ultimately doesn't really know how profitable they are on their fulfillment operation. And they might be winning on the shipping and the pick and pack against us, for example, per order sent. But then if they have a lot of accessory fees, they don't really know how that's going to average out against the pick and pack and the shipping rates. So it's possible, for example, that let's say 3PLB is competing against us to quote out a brand, and our shipping and our pick and pack is more expensive by 50 cents per order. With this second 3PL, they might get to the end of a month's invoice and then find that the invoice was slightly more expensive with them than it was with us, because it's hard for them to conceptualize exactly what the accessory fees will add up to be. So that's one side of the pragmatic approach. Then the other is 3PL set these fees up as a safeguard where they know that they're going to be guaranteed to make money and to be profitable on any given operation if the brands are going to be paying for storage, receiving, all of these things. Because ultimately, if we're providing it for free and then they send it to us and their store collapses for whatever reason, they just lose momentum and they can't sell anymore, then we don't make money on that account. We'll probably lose money ultimately because we have labor that we have to receive the goods and organize it and get it ready to ship. There's a lot of fees as safeguards for 3PLs to just ensure that they're profitable on any given operation. And that would be like the second major answer. And the third is we could bring them in, and then next year we could say, sorry, 5% raise on rates. And because they're not totally transparent on how the rates are calculated, then customers just have to accept the increase in pricing and try to make it work, Yeah, they could start to raise their prices insidiously. And if the contract doesn't favor the brand, then they'll just have to find a new home, which is a huge headache.
Right, right. Yeah, I love those nuanced answers, and it really gives you insight on like different perspectives. How do brands, you think, ask the right questions? I mean, we can't like obviously get all of protections up front, but you can ask like better questions to maybe not have as many surprise like fees, if you will, right?
Yeah, totally. So I would say there are two really important questions to ask. One is candidly, how do you guys mark up your shipping rates? So that would be the first question. And if they're able to transparently answer and say, we mark them up 20% just to account for different issues, which there are valid reasons to mark it up, of course, other than just making more profit. Because sometimes we'll ship a package and it ends up being weighted more than we thought it would. So we end up paying more. And if we hand the cost off directly to our brand, which we do largely, we end up exposing ourselves to taking on the extra cost. But I would say that you should ask how much they're marking up their shipping rates. And then the second question is every year, something happens called a GRI, which is a general rate increase. The UPS, the FedExes of the world, all of the carriers will increase the cost of shipping goods by about 5%. And what you should ask your 3PL is, how do we safeguard against getting exposed to a GRI? And the answer that we have is sometimes it's out of our control, but because we're a growing 3PL, that means that year over year, we have more volume, which gives us more negotiating room to be able to maintain or improve our shipping rates year over year. I guess asking that question to your 3PL will help you to understand, okay, well, I'm jumping into this 3PL today in August or September. Are we going to experience a 5% increase in our shipping costs going into January? And if we can't afford that 5% increase because we're just towing the line of profitability, are they willing to subsidize that increase by reducing their markup on shipping rates? Everything is negotiable. And I think that understanding those two things and positioning yourself in front of the 3PL where it's like, I understand kind of how pricing works here. I think that'll give brands a lot of leverage to be able to get better pricing.
Great. That's great information. So, what would you tell a brand just starting out?
Just starting out, I think that brands that are just starting out, I would encourage them to do fulfillment out of their own homes. If their product is in China, then I guess if we're talking about a brand that's looking to create their own product from scratch and they're getting it manufactured in the US, then I would say ship it to your home. If you have a garage, amazing. There are different platforms you could do, like Pirate Ship, that will allow you to get USPS labels and ship it from your house or drop it off at your local USPS. But I would say get your feet wet, do the fulfillment yourself, because that'll give you way more margin because boutique 3PLs exist and they could be amazing partners. But when they're smaller, they don't have as good competitive rates for shipping, and they typically need to benefit from you in terms of storage fees, of course, just because there's not going to be as much volume going out. So as a startup, it ends up becoming quite costly and risky if you're using a 3PL, just because it's going to make the cost per product that much higher. And I'm sure you've seen it too. Like, you guys probably have a lot of startup brands that are plugging into Cleverific. There's a lot of volatility in your sales if you're struggling to find the right creatives, the right marketing, and your break even ROAS has to be like a 2.5, which is so high, Uh, self fulfill, and that way you'll lean out on your expenses and you'll get an appreciation for what really makes a good 3PL once you're at that stage.
I love that advice. Some people just start and just go, and other people overthink what's possible rather than just get started, right? Like, you'll learn so much as you go that even if you put all your ducks in a row, it may be like probably maybe not the most cost effective way to go. I've run some brands, as have you, and just getting your hands dirty and just really understanding what's going on is like sometimes like the best lessons you can have, right?
Yeah. Oh, completely. The most learning I ever did was my first ever e-commerce like drop shipping store. I found out about drop shipping within 2 weeks. I'd ordered a bunch of products from AliExpress, from China, to test it out, make some ads, make the storefront. And I launched some ads and I broke even on like 5 sales, which I heard was really good at the time for just like first time doing a store. But dude, the learnings that I had from just like playing in the dirt for a bit was way more than like watching brands from the sidelines. And I love that you're doing that because I find a lot of people that I've intersected with that are on the tech side of Shopify, they're living amongst e-commerce brands and they're working with them and working with agencies, but they may not have actually gotten their feet wet and started a Shopify store and tried to sell something, like make the ads, make the PDP, create the customer experience from the front to the back. And we recently hired an account manager for our team. And I told him, I was like, dude, what would make you the perfect candidate? If you could create a Shopify store, run ads, and just get one sale, and like you would be perfect for this role. Because that was the one thing that was missing. And then I found out that he had done that.
Oh,
You're like, sweet.
nice. Perfect. So, what's the worst advice that you have heard in the maybe e-commerce or even 3PL or fulfillment space?
I would say one of the biggest, probably, I wouldn't say this is necessarily advice that I've explicitly heard, but it's something that I've seen people do and it hasn't necessarily gone well all the time, is develop a product from the ground up, get the product, and then create ads and then start marketing it. I would say that that's one of unless like your product is proprietary, I think with all of the AI tools that we have today, where we could generate imagery, we could get prototypes even. I would say probably the best thing to do if you're looking to start your own store and you want to do it with your own proprietary product is don't go and create 1,000 units right out the gates. Just get a prototype, create some ads, test the product market fit, see if you could sell it. And then if you've sold any of it, of course, you don't have stock. You could just go ahead and refund those orders to the customers and treat that as like your experimental spend where you're proving the concept before you're committing to the minimum order quantity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will chime in here and recommend that if anyone is creating a product, make sure that you read the mom test. Don't ask your friends or family. Don't ask. Basically, what it's saying is do not ask leading questions and do not ask people who want to support you, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
They'll all say it's a great idea. This is a
Yeah.
great product. And that would be my advice. Sure, before you spend all this time, you think this is a great idea. Don't ask the people who want to support you, really essentially at the end of the day. Right? And then if you ask like questions about your product, don't ask it in a way where you're selling it. So those are two key things before creating any product that would really help people out.
Yeah, and that reminds me, whenever I'm talking to ChatGPT, I have to try so hard to position myself where I'm not trying to lead it into any direction to answer. Every time I do by accident, it's so obvious because ChatGPT loves to give you the answer that you desire. So open-ended questions, don't give off that you're looking for like validation, you know. I'm actually very curious to dig into that book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Chat GPT, I use Claude, but I've asked Claude if I could turn off the "don't validate, stop being nice to me" feature, and it said no, it can't do that.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's and it makes sense because if you think about it as a product like anything else, to encourage you to continue to use a product, you need to feel validated, right? So
Yeah.
if it constantly questions you, why would you use such a thing? Human psychology like aside, right? So whatever tool you're using, you have to make sure that you pay attention and learn the skills to kind of remove bias as much as possible to get like a really good answer that will help you move forward quicker.
Yeah, completely.
Um,
Are you guys have you guys been able to use Claude a lot in your kind of design process or how's that been?
I'm starting to use it, yeah, and it's kind of it's been eye-opening and fun. I am using actually did a little experiment last night where I was just learning how to speak a language that made my directions clear and then test it. So a little tangent aside. So fun fact is I did two things. I basically said, here, copy this, right? And surprisingly, copy this doesn't work out as well as you think, at least not right now, right? Like the stuff was broken. I've said it before to Claude, you're a really bad designer. I've literally said that.
Angrily. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, for fun. I'm like, hey, just so you know, this is pretty bad design. And then I think it said something like, oh, validating me, you're right. Like, I should stick to my own lane or something like that. It was really funny. But, and then I did another pass where I was just really testing and not telling Claude like the final result that I wanted, but to start from the basics and then layer in. And then I got the result that I was looking for by explaining literally how I would do it like step by step, right? And then
Yeah.
through that process. And it was just more of a experience exercise for me than actually using it as an end result for something because just you're wanting to learn and push the boundaries of the tools that you have, right?
Yeah, completely. I sometimes get a little bit stressed thinking about AI and that I've given it so much credibility and I fear that we're losing sight of like the art. But then what you said is basically like, no, 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 you can incorporate your art into like educating the AI, like educating Claude to understand your process. And so it doesn't necessarily have to use the blanket process that it's trained to use or what it sees has efficacy from what it's detected online. We could start to actually train it to think in the same way that we do or a similar way that we do so that it's not entirely disconnected from, the way that we uniquely operate.
Yeah. So I think like a good rule of thumb that I have thought about, and I think about these things deeply, but maybe this helps someone, which is if you're using AI and you feel like it's dulling what you're doing, then you're probably not using it in the way that you should. Whereas if you think it sharpens what you're doing and refines it, then you're moving in the right direction with AI.
Mhm.
I think that's a
Yeah.
good marker.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think that's a great assessment of it.
I could talk about AI all day. So let's get back to maybe some more things that people want to know about fulfillment. We talked about brands just starting out. What's one thing that you would tell a brand that's operating at maybe like 50K orders a month or more?
I mean, that's pretty solid volume. I would be curious to see how they're forecasting their inventory because when you're going at that velocity, then you could very quickly be put into a precarious position if you're out of stock or you haven't put your goods on the ocean yet. Say if you're buying from Thailand, India, China, if it's international, that would probably be my biggest question if they're coming into the doors is how are you looking to lock in your supply chain and make sure that you're stocked up, but you don't have too much where you have so much liquid sitting at the warehouse, you know? I think that that's the main challenge that brands face when they're at that scale is managing their liquid and doing it well enough in advance that it'll land in a good enough cadence where they're not out of stock. I would say that's probably going to be like one of the bigger focuses that I have with a larger scale brand like that.
Got it. Got it. Now, so what do you think the biggest shift is going to happen in e-commerce in 2026?
I think that one thing that's going to take off in 2026 is going to be live shopping. I think Gary Vaynerchuk has been talking about it for a minute. He talked about it last year and the year before, but like we've seen it a lot in Southeast Asia, like in the Philippines and Thailand, like it's big. But here, I don't know if it's been as obvious that it's taking off. I think this is the year. I think this is the year. TikTok Shop took off last year and it's blown up. And so the natural evolution, I think, of that is that now customers are a little bit more comfortable buying straight from the platform. They're now going to buy from live shopping a little bit more frequently.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, I'm curious about that too, as someone who, not that I'm trying to date myself, recalls like QVC and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
HSN.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
has like that feel, obviously, with a whole different audience in a different market, but certain parts of that formula has always been around, right? And it was very popular for like a certain amount of time. I remember people would be on air, given an hour, they would run through their product line, and then you could buy some things. And actually, do you know Palm Street?
No, I don't.
Because Palm Street, you get to buy plants live, and they have that same kind of feature where they run you through, oh, this is the house plant that I have, and you can buy this, and you run through it. And it's pretty popular over there as well.
Wow.
Like
Okay.
live shopping. I'm always poking around it. I love Shopify, but I'm always looking at what
I'm
is going on
conventional.
out there that people are doing that I have no idea about. And this is
Yeah.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
Watched this YouTube video on the fringiest houseplants, and some of them were like $10,000. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would kill that plant in a
Yeah.
second if,
My cat would
if
knock it over.
but yeah, people are obsessed and like just getting into places where I love watching people who are obsessed with things, right? And so I'm kind of definitely curious as to how obsessive people will be with live shopping in 2026, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, you even see this there's so many guys just blowing up on social media where it's, they've got a little food truck and they're just recording themselves making potatoes, like making some simple food for customers and people find it so entertaining. I also see not just the reels but the live streams. People recording themselves running street food vendors. And it makes me want that food. Like I'm just watching the process of making it. I'm like, dude, I really want to try that. But
right?
unfortunately, this guy's in China, so I can't. But
Yeah.
uh, but I feel like if there are more founders who are willing to, like one of the brands that I actually met in Toronto, she'll do lives of her making her own candles and
Mhm.
people will buy as she's making them. And that's just like, that's so sweet. You're not like selling thousands upon thousands a month. It's just like, there's something so precious about just a boutique kind of setup like that isn't necessarily scalable, but you're watching her make each of these by hand, and it's really stellar. I wanna see more of those pop up, like founder
Absolutely.
stories, walking around the warehouse even showing their stock and people buy. But two, this is probably the craziest thing I've seen, is I saw a showcase on a Chinese brand owner who made an AI version of himself that looks legit, photorealistic. He was streaming for 10 hours using this AI, selling on a live feed. And so he
Wow.
wasn't even on there. He was just like, he was engaging with people, like typing, pretending to type, and talking about his product for 10 hours straight, and he wasn't even there. So,
Do you recall what he was selling? I want to know.
I wish I did. I don't recall.
Something that pops up in my feed is, I don't know if you've seen it, but the guy that's dancing and selling wigs. Have you seen that guy?
I've seen something like that. And like, yeah.
I'm obsessed by the weirdest things. I'm like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
I know 100% he's selling wigs, and he dances, he's wearing a suit, and then he takes it off of like part of his suit and then puts it on his head and then tosses it and then takes
yeah.
another one. Have you seen that guy?
I've seen something like that, a Chinese woman who will tear off a dress, put on a
Oh
different
yeah.
one, like, that kind of
Yes.
thing. This is so interesting. I can't stop watching. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's something
Same,
so
same.
captivating.
I'm sure there's other people like us who are just watching these crazy things that people are selling, especially like out of China, because their format is so different
Yeah.
than ours right now. That's probably why we're captivated by like the speed and how selling is done over there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, well, it was great talking to you. I'm sure we can talk about all kinds of random e-commerce subjects for days and days. But where can people find you and Ship Velocity?
Yeah, shipvelocity.com. Ship Velocity on socials. Feel free to reach out. We have a booking link right on the website. And you could book a call with me if you just want to chop it up and talk ecom, or if you're looking for a 3PL, I'd be happy to connect and chop it up.
Amazing. Matt, thank you so much. This was really great. And thanks to Matt and the Ship Velocity team. If you're dealing with fulfillment costs or you have questions, Matt is the person that you want to talk to. Thanks so much. Check them out at shipvelocity.com and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much too. See ya.